Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Kelly, and I'm going to be your host for today's presentation, Turning SAP into an Asset by Increasing Customer Satisfaction and Product Availability. Each of our webinars addresses a component of the SAP-centric end-to-end supply chain. With each session, we invite you to examine your own supply chain and empower you to use the powerful capabilities already built in SAP. Before we get started with today's presentation, let's discuss how it will proceed. This webinar will last approximately 30 to 45 minutes, followed by a question and answer period at the end. Please capture your questions in the question or chat section in your dashboard. At this point in time, I would like to introduce you to Christy Bain, today's speaker. Christy is an advisor here at Reveal. She has over 20 years of practical integrated supply chain management experience across a variety of industries from fashion, retail, and retail and entertainment to customer packaged goods, manufacturing, and automotive accessories. She specializes in organizational change management, decision support solutions, and integrated business planning processes for supply chains of all shapes and sizes. And with that, hello, Christy. I'd like to introduce you and pass the presentation over to Christy.
Great. Thanks, Kelly. Hello, everyone. I hope your days are going well. I know it's an interesting time that we're all living in right now, and I know particularly this month of August, we approach the start of the school year, is challenging. But I'm looking forward to spending the next 30 to 45 minutes with you, talking a little bit about how we can improve customer satisfaction and the correlation to product availability. So first of all, I want to share with you that we have an opportunity to participate throughout our conversation today, and we're facilitating that through the use of a tool called Mentimeter. So if you would like to participate in our polling, please go to menti.com, and you can see the web address on here, and then enter the code 50360. And I'm going to pause and talk here for just a moment to give everyone a chance to go and find that website and then put in the code. It's going to help drive our conversation, and it will shape some of what I'm talking about today based on the results from the folks that we have in participation. So go ahead and make your way either on your phone or your laptop or tablet to www.menti.com and enter code 50360. If you have any questions about that, feel free to enter them into the web chat box. We'll see those and get a response back to you, okay? So I'm really excited because we are broadcasting today from our new studio here at Reveal, and it's awesome because it's going to give us an opportunity to interact with you more often and to provide more frequent communication around things that we're seeing. And especially right now with all the things in the world that are changing and going on, and as we all maneuver working in new ways and understanding new requirements from our customers, it's a really nice opportunity for us to be able to have touch points with you. So super excited to be taking the new room out on its maiden voyage here in trying to do this today. Okay, so hopefully that bought you some time and you were able to go to menti.com and enter code 50360 so that you're able to get into the polling. We'll have 3 polling questions throughout today's discussion, and like I said, I will use that as an opportunity to shape our conversation a little bit today. So we are talking today about returns on assets. And so when we think in terms of assets and liability, I wanted to just kind of shape our conversation. We have the standard definitions and calculations here, but I really wanted to take a moment and say, we want to think about this in terms of customer satisfaction. So when we think about return on assets, we're really thinking about return on the time, effort, and expectation that we have as it relates to the amount of of effort that's being put in. So when we try to put ourselves in the position of our customer's point of view and understanding what really satisfies them, that's really the crux of our conversation today. And we're thinking specifically about how we can use SAP as a facilitator of being able to meet those customer requirements and end up in a place where we have happy customers. So as Kelly highlighted earlier, this is part of a series, and I'm going to go ahead and do the little "We Are Here" marker for you so you can see. But there's a number of other topics that are out there that you can take a look at. And what I wanted to kind of comment on as we think about going through this journey is that we started this series and laid it out last year. So as we've gone through and had the abstract for today's talk, I was sitting there last week thinking, wow, product availability and customer satisfaction, that's going to be a great conversation. It's going to be a very different conversation from the conversation we would have had going into the beginning of this year. So, you know, with COVID in place and with a number of other, you know, even more recent events in terms of, you know, natural disasters and some of the things that we're all going through and managing through right now, you know, a lot of things have changed. I know for me personally, even some of my buying patterns, what I'm looking for, what I rely on partners and suppliers for, what my expectations are, have changed. It's really been shaped based on the amount of transformation that we're having in our own lives and our ability to be agile and flexible and meet this moment head on and try to shape our offering and even who we are, even within our family units, to one another in order to be successful and have great relationships. And so if we think about how that builds into customers, that's a big part of the return that we're able to give them. So when we talk today, we're going to talk through a couple of different pieces of the process. The first thing is really setting our plans in place. And this is really about being clear on our intentions and honoring who we are to our customers. So as everything is moving, we know at our core what our offering is and how we can best bring that to fruition in a positive way, in the way that we interact, in the customer service policies we have, and in the way that we can take care of our customers. It may look or feel a little bit different now, but we still have that foundation of development of who our organization is and who our people are and how we're able to respond. And then the second thing we're going to talk about is just how do you deal with or manage through the uncertainty. And then the last piece is really, and then how do we make sure that through all of this, we continue to deliver on our promises and be the partners that we really hope to be. And then we'll do a little wrap up in which I've embedded some tips and tricks for helping us to make sure that we stay the course and we're able to provide the level of satisfaction that's needed. All right, so we are up to our first polling question, and I'd like to invite you all to participate. And when we go through this one, we're thinking about what do our customers expect from us? So, and this is really in terms of product availability. So when we say product availability, are your customers expecting that you have product on the shelf that is ready to ship today? Do you have product available that is based on a standard lead time? Or are you in an environment where you are making product for your customer based on a negotiated lead time? So if you want to enter in and provide a response there, that would be great. And we'll use that to help shape our conversation today. We'll just wait here for a moment and let everyone have an opportunity to go through and enter some responses in. Is anyone having trouble? Anything come across in the chat? Okay, great. Fantastic. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead while you're thinking through that and move on to our second question, which is how do our customers, what do our customers really value us for? And this is a ranking question. So ranking from 1 to 5, do our customers value us most for our ingenuity and innovation? Is it for exceptional quality? Is it because we offer a great value for the price? Is it in our value added services? So, maybe that is doing one last little bit of efficiency builder before sending product out the door. Maybe it's adding a marker, a barcode, or label. Maybe it is in the way that we reach out and touch and have conversations with our customers. Value added services could mean a lot of different things, but it's the extra going above and beyond. And then the last one is, is it our reliability in delivering on our promises? So what is most important for our customers? I'm just going to wait a moment and let those responses come in. And so I'm seeing right now that in the lead, we have the reliability of delivering on our promises. So once we've told our customers something, they are relying on us to be able to deliver in that way. They're taking our word and expecting us to be able to meet it. Great. Just going to give it another moment here. Okay, and then for anyone who is maybe just joining us right now, I'd like to invite you to participate in the online polling we have going on, because we're using that to shape our conversation today. So if you look at the top of the screen there, you'll see a web address, and it's www.menti.com, and there's a code that you'll be prompted for. And you can access this from a laptop, a tablet, or from your phone. So the code is 50, 36, and 0. And if you want to enter that in, we do have one more polling question that we'll be getting to here in just a little bit. So for those of you who've already gone in and entered some responses, thank you. That's very helpful. And I can see, and this is interesting, there's a difference between what customers see as value that drive them to pick you over your competitor, versus the things that are minimum viable in order to be able to enter into business with you. And so I would expect that, that's why we specifically said exceptional quality rather than quality. That's a piece of what we're seeing here, that there's a minimum that we're already there, and so this would be going above and beyond. Okay. All right, so moving right along. If we see this nice integrated framework that we have on the screen, I really want to highlight 3 things for you. And the first thing is that when we set our intention, we are then aligning the actions in the supply chain to support it. And this is, in the context of today's conversation, really around understanding what the value is for our customers, what it is that they are looking for, versus what we have available in the way that we choose to serve them. So based on who we are and who we want to be to our customers, we have a plan going in, and that's everything from understanding their demand to understanding customer tolerance times to understanding the best way in which they want to be served, or anything additional that we need to do in order to be able to keep their business once we've earned it, or the prerequisites for earning it in the first place. And then from that plan, we go through and we schedule activities, right? And this is really what drives the bulk of what we're doing functionally, cross-functionally throughout the supply chain. And this is really where that alignment of supply and demand is occurring. So this is where the rubber kind of hits the road or meets the road, and it's our ability to meet that moment and fill that need. And then the last thing is that the actual. And so this is what we're actually able to do, and how that can tie back to our plans. And where this becomes really important in thinking about the upstream processes is were we able to achieve what we set out to? Did our intentions stay intact? Were we able to then have a schedule that was reasonable and reliable? And then based on that, were we able to actually achieve it? And that really drives towards our ability to reliably deliver on our promises. And in order to do that, in that middle step in the scheduling, we have to have a plan that is reasonable. So what we see here is the ATP and MRP wheel. And when we think about available to promise and material requirements planning, we have 2 best friends. They have to work in partnership with one another, and they are enablers for one another. So ATP is a set of rules that allows us to determine what product is available and when. So if we're good We are able to promise against what we actually have. So this is inventory that is recorded in SAP and is available to the customer. And that means our inventory counts are good. We can trust the values that we see in the system. Everything is good to go there. And then if we want to be great, then we're able to go a little further out. We're able to promise against that schedule. And that means that we are promising against production orders and purchase orders or process orders that are out there in the system. And we're able to commit to those or firm planned orders. And then if we want to be world-class, we can reach out even a bit further. And now we're into the realm of the unknown a bit. That's our future-looking plan that is well outside of our firm zone. And those are the activities that we plan to do based on our intended plan. So 5 quick tips or pieces of information in regards to ATP are available to promise. So the first thing to know is that ATP runs on a list of inclusions and exclusions. And so if you think about the way that we move across the wheel, that's exactly what we're talking about. So we make the progression from good to great to world class. So how confident am I in my ability to execute to my plans? How confident am I that I know that when I see a purchase order out there or a production order out there in the system, that I am going to have that available at the date and time that it says, and the quantity and quality that we are looking for. So it runs on a list of inclusions and exclusions that allows us to shape the way that we are confirming or promising to our customer. And the goal is to have a promise that we can keep. And then the second thing is that there is something called a checking rule. And those checking rules evolve through the course of the process. So for example, you have one checking rule for a sales order that perhaps based on customer tolerance time allows you to include some of those scheduled items, inventory that is not physically available yet. Or you may have a situation with deliveries where you count, then you reduce that a bit and you are only considering what is actually available. And this, by the way, translates over into the way that we do material availability checking when we think about our internal commitments to our manufacturing process in the form of material availability checking. The next thing to know is that dates matter. So if you have past due, outdated elements in the system, we are still planning on those coming in, and as such, it affects dramatically our available to promise or material availability checking. And then the next thing to know is that sequence matters. And usually once we've gone through and maybe you've gone through and your system is now clean, you've done some optimizations, you're on your next round, what's the next thing that really matters? This is the behavior portion of things. So sequence matters. So if you've made promises, particularly if your checking rule is different between sales orders and deliveries, the way we promise to those customers, you want to make sure that when we get into the realm of actual promising and conducting those physical moves of activities, that we are in a place where we are executing in the order anticipated. So otherwise, we run the risk of jumping in line. And I would say this is one of the most common issues that folks find, particularly as you're making that transition into transportation and logistics management and going outbound to the customer. And then the last thing is that you want to be just really honest with where we are, where we want to get to, and how we're going to get there. So you have to have a plan for making all of these transitions in order to be able to meet the customer's requirements and understand what it is that they are really looking for. So with that said, we are going to go on to our next polling question, and this is a really important one for how we're going to shape the conversation today. And I can see some folks have already had an opportunity to jump in and provide a response, so it's awesome. Thank you. So we feel confident making promises to our customers based on what SAP shows in inventory. So this would mean I believe that we have the correct inventory amounts in the system. We are cycle counting on a regular basis, or we've proven that we are at a percentage accuracy where that's not necessary. Those are the kinds of things that we want to look for there. The second thing is, scheduled production. So now I've got it on the schedule. I know I've got activities that are backing that up. There are plans in motion. And then the last is that forward-looking plans. So, we can see right now that we are tied for, believing we can promise against inventory and then believing that we can promise against even schedule. So that's that's great. That shows a good amount of confidence that at least within our firm window that we have a belief that we're going to be able to effectively execute against those plans and scheduled activity. All right. Continue on here. So here we have a picture of the modern supply chain, and it's really divided into a couple of different areas. So we've got supply chain planning and supply chain execution. And we have what we consider the internal or core supply chain, and then also the extended supply chain. So when we think about product availability, we all know that the devil's really in the mix. We have not enough of the right stuff and too much of the wrong stuff. And inventory at that point can move from being an asset to becoming a liability. And so, inventory is continuing to move around as we go through the course of the process. And a lot of what we're trying to think through is the right place to have that inventory in order to be able to meet customer needs. So what helps us to kind of thread the needle and keep our plans coordinated and on track, it's really in the effective flow of both data and information for decision making and for actions and activities, coupled with the effective flow of product. And so what really makes this effective is that the information that we're sharing and the way that we're moving our product through the system is relevant. And when we think about relevancy, we're thinking about relevancy in the context of how is it relevant to our customers' needs? Do I have time to make an adjustment? Am I able to get the value-added services that they're looking for? What is it that makes having that product really relevant to our customer? And then on the flip side, if it's product that's not relevant to the customer because it's not moving, then we know that the effort that is spent in those items are perhaps less of a wise inventory investment, and we want to look at and adjust accordingly to make sure that where we are choosing to invest in inventory, it's the right place in order for it to be relevant to our customers' needs. So how do we do that? So one of the things that is really important as we think things through is in our strategy choices. So in SAP, we have a plethora of options available to us. There's a planning strategy that is available for almost every type of environment in any way that we would want to manage our demand. And when we think about what a planning strategy or these strategy choices are, it is the way that we interpret a demand signal and choose to respond to it. And maybe an easier way to think about it is in the three big blocks of make to stock, make to order, or finish to order. And a lot of this is dependent on two things. First, where you are able to get a compelling demand signal that will help you to drive an effective use of materials. And second, based on your customer's tolerance time, which goes back to our first polling question, which was, does your customer expect to have it on the shelf today? Do you have a standard lead time, or are you able to promise out based on a negotiated lead time? Ultimately, what this does is help us to know where to stock our products, at what level of the bill of material we should stock our products, and help us to avoid having either high dead stock or frequent stockouts. And then maybe perhaps another consideration for this is in the segmentation. So we go through and we classify our products not only by A, B, and C, which is really the value that is driven through those products and inventory turns, but also by X, Y, Z. And in this case, we are talking about the variability and the volatility of our products and our ability to be able to get a predictable signal that we're able to respond to. So once we have our plans in place and we've got our strategies in motion, we know the level at which we're going to stock our inventory and where we're going to stock it. The next thing is thinking through how we deal with what is happening right now, which is that there's some degree of uncertainty. So with uncertainty comes chaos, confusion, analysis paralysis, a lot of local optima, which means we're making decisions that are good for the moment that we're in and what's immediately facing us, and then questions that maybe don't have definitive answers. And then the struggle is just, and I would bet that if you touch any aspect of the supply chain right now, you are feeling this not only at work, but also at home and even in friend and social situations, because before the first of the year, everybody knew the word supply chain, but it has a whole new context and meaning now for people. And I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I've been getting lots of calls from friends and family members, even, in the last couple of weeks, asking me what I know about availability of things that are important to them, and whether we will have sustained availability, and whether they need to, make contingency plans or stock at their own houses and homes, products where they are concerned that they're not going to be available. And especially with the holidays on the horizon, people are now even starting to think through that. So, we are all in a place where we know that we're trying to compensate for a signal that's not necessarily clear. And as such, we are put into a position where we're having to have a little bit more guesswork in the process in order to be able to figure out what the best path forward looks like. So, and then the result of this is really the bullwhip effect. And I know, we're all likely familiar with this and what happens, but really, as we go out, particularly into the extended supply chain. So once we're outside of, what is within our realm of control, but now into our customers and suppliers, we've got to recognize that everybody is feeling this. And by the way, everybody also has systems that are set up with rules in them that control the amount of orders that are being placed. So if you think about that and you think the complexity of shaping your own strategies and the way that you want to approach and provide solutions to the variability in demand that we're seeing today, so too is that happening for your suppliers and your customers. And so you just take that and you magnify it, and we end up with what we would say is the bullwhip effect is really in full effect right now. So it's a challenge. But one thing I want to comment on that I think is often overlooked is that, we train our customers by our own behavior. So our ability to serve and our reliability has a direct impact on our customers' ordering behavior. So too does our ability to have conversations with our customers during times that are stressful and concerning. So the closer we can get to our customers and the more that we can have productive conversations with them, especially in regards to what their needs are today, where their focuses are, and, simple things like, oh my gosh, we just saw a huge order come in. Is that because it is needed, or did we just make a safety stock adjustment that has, put an immediate demand in the system that is pushing all the way through the supply chain? So, this is a situation where we all have to collectively work together, and it's a bit uncomfortable because we are at a point where we have to reach beyond the bounds of our own organizations and now out into the extended supply chain and make good decisions that benefit everyone. So really encourage you to have those conversations that go out into your partners, where those partnerships are at a place where or build them into a place where you can have those good conversations. So when we think about, the integrated information flow, which helps us to make good decisions, right? It's really about the transparency and the visibility. There's a couple of highlights here as it pertains to our conversation today. The service level expectations. So what are your customers looking for in terms of your ability to service them? What is their tolerance time, or the number of days that they're willing to wait before an order ships out the door? How much lead time are they willing to give you? What is the expected product availability? And, we've got a number of customers right now that we've been talking to through our COVID relief program, which if you haven't checked that out, you definitely should. We've been chatting with folks who are saying, I got to kind of look beyond a specific customer account. Now I'm looking at things on a more national or key account level, or I'm looking by region to make sure that there's, enough product to service the end customer, even if I'm not able to get to each of my individual customers. So you may be mining and looking at data in ways that you have not before. And as each portion of the country has the opportunity to reopen or do different things, we're seeing those impacts in the way that we're promising the customer and what the expectation is in return. And then as we think through this, in order to be able to have everyone working and moving in the same direction with the customer always at the front of our mind, we have to have good, accurate, clear information and communication up and down the supply chain. So even if the clarity of that signal coming into you is not great right now, having a program in place or an approach in place that you can communicate and use to coordinate all of the activities throughout the supply chain is really going to help everyone who is working so hard and in so many different ways right now. So the effective information flow really enables the effective material flow. So want to touch back real quick on the available to promise. We talked about, what allows you to move through kind of the maturity and being able to make those promises and the truth, the hard truth of looking at where we are and what we can effectively promise and being able to adapt and adjust those rules accordingly. But there's an extra little wrinkle that comes into the picture here, and that is when we move through the order cycle. So there are many, many things that can cause us to need to repromise an order or trigger a new availability check. And when we do that, there is additional variability that is introduced into the process. So you want to make sure that when you're considering that and the way that you're handling your orders and the amount of touch that you have with your orders, that is a consideration and you're keeping an eye on how changeable that can be. And in a few minutes here, I'm going to show you an example that will really help bring that to light. All right, so how do we make sure that we are going to be able to deliver on our promises? So the first thing, and we always come back to it, is this concept of moving through the value funnel. And really what that is the alignment of business behavior. So it is the things that we do, it is the things that our customers do, it's the things that our suppliers do, it's the human component of what it is that we're doing, and then the ability to articulate that into the system so that the system understands what is going on, in this case SAP, is really the business rules. So, if you look at the exception monitor, you've got a bunch of people sitting around the table, and the reason for that is that it's always a cross-functional conversation in order to be able to make things happen. And the output of that is really, the things that are in the bubble: flexibility, revenue, having the right stock, being able to optimize, provide the right service at the right cost, and then having quality of information that really turns into insights that help direct our decisions and help us to make better plans. So the good news is that there's a great tool that can help us with the day-to-day management of what's going on with our sales orders, and that is something called the sales order monitor. And what this allows us to do, much like exception monitoring and the little screenshot we showed on the last page here, this guy down in the corner helps us to kind of know what's going on with our stock status and whether we're at risk for service level degradation or if we're in a position where we potentially even have surplus stock. This allows us to see what is going on with our sales orders. And if set up in the right way, we're able to see the contrast between the requested delivery date, which is the date the customer is requesting, versus the date that we are able to confirm, and also how much we've been able to confirm versus what they're looking for, as well as a multitude of other potential disruptions in the order processing cycle. So this is a really great tool to use to your advantage and really think about bringing to bear right now. The other thing that it does for us is it allows us to get out of single order management into a more strategic position where we're thinking about what's going on with that customer account overall. So something else that I will highlight for you, two popular techniques, and these are things that we are getting asked regularly about, so I wanted to make sure that we touched on them today, is product allocation and rescheduling. So these are two techniques that help us to control and prioritize how we are servicing our customer orders. So if you see my sweet little Pikachu over here, that's on the Nintendo Switch, which I happen to know is hard to get your hands on right now. So it seemed like a perfect example. So in this case, it's proactive account management for what you are going to make available. So you're making that decision before the order even comes in. There's an allotment of inventory that is available, and customers are able to place orders up to a percentage split over a period of time, or quantity split over a period of time. And then kind of on the flip side of that is something called rescheduling. And rescheduling is can be a very effective tool in the ability to prioritize the orders that you do have, particularly in times where maybe supply is shifting around, or there's, you've got raw material shortages, or you're over capacity, you're managing through those types of situations. This helps us to realign the sales order and the promise dates to our priorities, the way that we wish to service our customer. And it even allows us to do things like incorporate in delivery prioritization. So if you've got certain key accounts that you absolutely must service, or if you want to do some sort of fair sharing rule, or you need to prioritize based on region and transportation time, there's a variety of ways that you can approach setting the price strategy in place. And this will really help you to be able to effectively manage the orders that you have during times where rescheduling is necessary. So, really constrained stock situations or variability in when things are available. So both of these are generally, if you're finding you're needing to use them, it's a good time for us to go back and recheck our ATP rules, make sure that those are in a good place, and then use this as a supplemental tool to help us. When you reschedule, the reason why there's a picture of a deck of cards there is that you are reshuffling the deck. So you're going to go back through and reconfirm those orders. And there's two ways to do that. You can either do this automatically, where it's a batch job that's scheduled and it's just going to reschedule and reschedule and reschedule, or you can do this manually for a specific purpose in a strategic way. And particularly if you are getting started with this, that is the recommendation. And here's the reason why, and this ties back to what I was mentioning earlier on the available to promise slide, where I said, hey, hang on, we're going to come back to this, is this notion of the amount of changes or the times that an order can be reprocessed. So if you're triggering your ATP check all the time, you're running rescheduling in the background on a regular basis. The good news is that you're trying to pick up product as it becomes available. Maybe you've got a very small window you're only promising and switch you actually have, so you're constantly rechecking in order to get that product to be available to the customer. The trouble occurs when you have promises already in place and you're constantly rescheduling and moving those promises around. So you see all the little red boxes on here, those are times where we've actually changed either the quantity or the date promise, and that's just through running rescheduling. And this poor lady up in the upper right hand corner, she's got 3 monitors going on trying to figure out what's happening and how she can promise. And then unfortunately in the lower left hand corner, that leaves our poor customer just feeling battered and windblown because they don't know when that product is actually coming in. So this is just a note of caution. If you find that your sales orders, if you go to the change logs and they look like this and those promise dates are just moving all over the place, it's a good time to maybe rethink through those strategies. These are all great tools. You just want to make sure that we're using them in the most effective way. And when we think about the most effective way, we're going back to effective information flow, effective material or product flow, which leads to product availability and overall customer satisfaction. Okay, I'm going to bring us home here. So I think that this is something that we know and feel that the stats are still impressive when we talk about the customer experience. So keeping a customer is much easier and costs us much less than getting a new customer. So we want to make sure that for the customers we have, we do everything that we can to keep them. And when we think through that and we're able to deliver good news to a customer, here's our customer. She's very happy. But the other thing that happens is that we have the people who are trying to make that good news happen, who are trying to be the voice of the customer and the voice to the customer and represent our organization in the best way. When they are able to have transparency and visibility, and they're able to have that continuity from plan to schedule to actual, and things are flowing well, it makes for a very happy team member. And what we're really trying to do here is be able to give great service, provide good advice, even in times where things are challenging, give the necessary support, be trustworthy, assist our customers, help them, guide them, and provide them with quality of service and of product. And so employing some of these tools can really help us to be able to succeed in doing that. So lastly, I want to leave you with just a couple of tips here. So when we think about considerations to help ensure product availability and customer satisfaction, the first thing here we want to say is that dates matter. So we want to make sure that we are accounting for the time that is needed for our activities to occur and be able to produce a realistic plan. So, if you're sitting here going, man, getting a beat on my customer demand, but manufacturing is just, we're still struggling, they're way over capacity. Well, are we giving them a realistic plan to begin with? And how do we manage through those constraints through good, productive conversations with our customers? And then, the second piece of that is translating your customer satisfaction strategy into the system. So do you have a rule and cadence of activities that will support who we want to be to our customers and how we want to provide service to them. And never before has there been a more intense need for thinking through who we are and how we want to achieve our customer satisfaction and getting close to our customers to understand what it is that they need. And then we want to make sure that we are sharing information in our single source of truth to enable us to make good decisions, prioritize, and execute. Because remember, we were talking about the importance of that sequencing, making sure that activities are happening as planned. And this is what will allow us to close those loops and be able to do that. And then we have to remember, history repeats itself. Even when you have situations where you've got some outliers going on, you need to have clean representation of what has happened, because what's going to end up happening as we do our future planning is your demand planning team is going to come in and they're going to go through and they're going to make adjustments to clean up the things that are not relevant to the future. But in order for them to do that, they've got to have the clean signal. So one of the tips here is just make sure you're recording the customer's requested delivery date. If they aren't giving that to you today, if it's just defaulting in, have a conversation, have one conversation with a key account and see if you can move towards getting better information on what their needs are. Whether you are adjusting and have a default lead time or whether they are now giving you a relevant requested delivery date, I challenge you to have one good conversation. And then the second piece of that is that if you are having to drop a line because of inventory availability, make sure that you are rejecting that line with an appropriate reason code rather than deleting it. And then lastly, is strategically managing those accounts. So we're talking about being able to monitor through the sales order monitor and look at things more based on, customer accounts and how you're servicing overall, or even be able to look by channel or region, however it is that you like to break down your business. But getting to know your customer to the next level, drive insights from places where perhaps you haven't been able to mine before and bring that into the conversation. Make sure that where you are spending your time and effort is in where your customer is appreciating that value. So this allows us to align our plans and move forward in supporting overall customer satisfaction. So customer front of mind, we will weather our way through this and handle the uncertainty, but certainly this conversation will continue, especially as we see how things continue to play out and we try to plan for the new normal at such a time where the new normal exists. So thank you very much. I'm going to hand it back over to Kelly to bring us home.
Thanks, Christy. We got to do a couple questions for you that came in. So the first question is, you talk about coordination of activities across the supply chain to ensure product availability and customer satisfaction. How do we get manufacturing aligned with the most urgent needs?
That's a great question. The best way to make sure that manufacturing is aligned with the current needs is to make sure that they have a schedule that is something that is achievable. So if you're currently delivering a demand signal to manufacturing that is well in excess of capacity for particular work centers, you really need to delve into that ability to do some what if scenarios and make sure that that prioritization to them is clear by managing the quantities and dates required. So they're going to go through that process of generating a plan, and there's going to be back and forth between the demand planning team and the supply planning team to make sure that we've got that in the best alignment. And then as we sending that through to the shop floor, just making sure that the considerations, the way that they make decisions operationally are really reflected in the way that we're delivering those plans to them.
Okay, great. Thanks, Christy. We do have a couple more questions for you. The second question, we are adding additional safety stock to make sure we have enough on high demand items. Any tips for getting that right?
Yeah, so we were talking a little bit about the inventory segmentation or classification earlier. So that ABC XYZ matrix that we were showing, that's an important component to trying to make sure that you've got those levels correct. What I would say too is you're thinking about increasing your coverage. make sure you're doing that in a way that is able to be accomplished. So the only thing that makes a constrained capacity situation worse, whether that be at your facility or at your suppliers in terms of raw materials, is just dumping more demand into the system. So look for a way to phase that in at a reasonable and achievable rate, and then try to ask for what's important and what's relevant, and use the ABC XYZ classification to help you understand where that best investment makes sense.
And then you had mentioned that Reveal is still offering COVID-19 relief, and you had said to have the audience check that out. And how do they learn more about that?
Awesome. So yeah, if you go to our website, which is revealvalue.com, you'll see at the top there is a C19 supply chain relief, and there's a little banner there. And if you don't know what this offering is, it's actually really outstanding, and I've been so excited to get to be a part of it. We're offering some pro bono assistance relief. So that is a great way to reach out to us if you have a COVID related problem. It's another way for us to be able to engage with you and give you some assistance and advice as you're trying to think through this. So if you've got something specific, we'd love to chat with you and see if we can help make it better.
That sounds great. Thanks, Christy. And that's all the questions that we have for today. So this webinar is going to be available later today on our website under the resources tab. And then you're going to also find under resources all of our previously recorded webinars and other educational content, such as white papers, blogs, and other useful, helpful publications. And then I'd like to ask you to join us for our next webinar, which is going to be Wednesday, September 16th, about turning SAP into an asset by maximizing your talent. And this is going to be presented by Stephen Crook. So with that, we'll be sending that information out to you in advance, and we hope you can attend. And thank you again, Christy, and everybody have a great day and stay safe.
All right. Thank you, everyone.